To Steve Covey, trust function as a multiplier. When the trust is high, your speed goes up.
Okay.
Your ability to get things done is much higher when there is a trust.
All right, it's time to get stuff done. And I'm joined today by another fantastic guest. Her name is Cathy Choi. She's a global HR leader who has about 17 years of professional experience across HR. She has worked for Procter & Gamble, for Google, and is now currently with TikTok. She has covered many areas of the HR field. She's originally from Korea, born in Seoul. She graduated from Seoul National University in English language and literature, and she has since worked overseas in Beijing, New York, and is currently based in Singapore. In her current role, she's leading a global HR team at TikTok, and she's also a working mum with a daughter of 9. So, Cathy, thank you so much for being my guest today on the podcast.
Thanks, Gordon, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent. And so I'm going to jump straight in with the most important question of all, which is, what is your personal strategy for getting stuff done?
Yes, getting stuff done is important, and I believe getting things done is beyond the to-do list or productivity app. So I believe they should start from the mindset. So I personally no longer feel like, oh, I don't have time. So I shifted that mindset to I have enough time to do what's most important to me. So why is it important? Because those scarcity mindset or thoughts triggers the emotions. So for example, if I feel like, oh, I don't have enough time, I have so many things to do, that triggers the emotions of anxiety or fear. So that leads to the action or inaction, which is procrastination.
Right.
And that gets no result. But
Sure.
if I change my mindset to, okay, I have enough time to do what's most important to me, that make me feel like at ease. I feel like I'm in control. So that leads to the positive action of prioritization and planning and execution. So that leads to a great result.
Okay. And is this something that did you kind of get some external source for your approach to this, or is this something that you've just learned through kind of experience over the years?
Yeah, so getting things done is important. So I try to learn a lot of tactics, and then when I try to do that, I join a lot of coaching sessions or read a lot of books. So
Okay.
in one of the coaching session, I learned this the mindset shift, and also learned the practical approach of how do I then plan my week.
And so now, as a team leader, you of course have responsibility for other people's output, right? The stuff that they have to get done. How have you been able to transition into that? Because obviously, making sure that other people get everything done is a totally different skill set and a totally different requirement to just getting your own stuff done.
Absolutely. It's still a learning journey. So I now lead a global team. It's a kind of big team. So I learned the hard way that what I think I am communicating is not necessarily what my team is hearing. So I learned the art of over communications.
Okay.
So over communication is really important because it ensures that everyone is aligned and informed and engaged to achieve the common goals. And when you over communicate, it leaves a little room for misunderstanding and reminds the team of what's most important on a regular basis. Sharing more information, I learned that it builds a trust with the team as well. So around like about the 3 tips that I learned for effective over communication is number one, I repeat the same messages. And there's a saying that we need to say the same messages at least 7 times before the message sticks with the team.
7 times. Okay.
7 times. So
Okay.
you feel like I'm tired of saying it, then that is the time that when the team
Yeah.
start to remember what I'm trying to say.
When you put it in
And
those ways, yeah, that kind of makes sense. At the point when you're thinking, I'm repeating myself, but that, as you say, that's when they're actually getting it. Okay.
Exactly. So repetition is important. And when I
Uh-huh.
try to repeat, I try to use the multiple channels. So I share the goals and priorities in a larger group or a smaller group or one-on-ones, and even in the writing. So that's
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
effective. And lastly, I try to encourage the feedback. So I host the regular, like ask me anything sessions or coffee chat with the team so that the team can have a forum to ask me any questions and clarify if there's any uncertainties.
And I guess that's one of the key kind of sources of conflict or mistakes is coming from a difference in expectations. And I think what you're saying is that when you are over communicating, you're eradicating that opportunity for that mismatch, because you're ensuring that they're clear about what you're trying to communicate to them. So yeah, I think that sounds like a really effective way to do that. And let me just overlay the cross-cultural element to that, because you're Korean, based in Singapore, multicultural team. So how does that kind of play into the way in which you filter or kind of tailor your approach?
Yes, that's important. So when I was born and grew up in Korea, so I grew up in a Korean education system, and that's when I started to work in a more global, diverse environment. What I learned is I really need to change my belief or the mindset again. So when I grew up in Korea, in the Korean education system, it's important to get the right answers. So instead of asking a lot of questions or having a unique point of view, I really hope that now things have been changed. But when I grew up, it was more so like this. And then we have this saying in Korea, and if I
Mhm.
just translate exactly into English, the more ripe the rice plant, the lower it bends its head. So
Okay.
this proverb emphasized the humility and encouraged everyone to just keep their heads down and not boast about your achievement.
Right.
And as you
Right.
can imagine, after I started to work again in a more global, diverse environment, I found that this is not always helpful
Right.
because in many, many Western culture, you may know better, right? Actually, self-advocacy or self-promotion is accepted and even expected. So
Right.
people are encouraged to share their accomplishment and ask questions, have point of view. So I had to learn how to build my confidence and share and highlight my achievements more broadly, even though it felt sometimes uncomfortable. So I tried to have a balance of being humble, but at the same time share my achievement more broadly so that that is helpful for my team and my own career growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, even though hyper modern tech oriented workplace, right? You can get on a video call with anyone in the world at any time. You can connect so easily in multiple of channels. But when it really comes down to communicating from someone with a different background, it still surprises me that something that you might think is so simple and so straightforward and obvious, like there's only one way that they could think about this. You think it initially, and then it turns out that they thought about this one thing just totally opposite. Like you couldn't even expect that way. That continues to be the case, right? I think for all the boundaries and borders which have been broken down through technology, still cross-cultural work is that much more challenging. And so I think, yeah, having that mindset that you mentioned, I think is a really good way to approach things. So can I ask then about how would you describe the kind of the culture in which you're working? Do you feel that you're in a kind of unique company culture, or where you're at, is it mostly a country culture, which is kind of the framework, or how do you see that in where you're at right now?
In the culture. So culture is a set of behaviors. So, and then that behavior is described in every country or company that I work. So
Hmm.
how do they think about the culture is what is expected? Maybe sorry, this one I will think time. So your question is about how the culture plays in terms of getting things done, or
Well, so I had a guest in on a previous episode, and he had worked in lots of different countries, but always for American companies. And he realized that actually, and he was American, but he only
Mm,
realized when he went to other countries with those American companies that the culture of the company was very American. He
mm,
didn't realize that until he was in those companies in other countries. And so that's what I'm curious about, because some companies they really try to make that they try to
shift.
harmonize, and they try to make it very homogenous across the world. Other companies try to very much localize and try to be very much in harmony with the local, and I'm just wondering about that in your experience.
Got it, got it. So I got it. So you're asking about the company culture and then what the company try to drive in those culture when it comes to business. Good. So I work in HR, but culture is very important. We have also this saying that, culture is the strategy for breakfast. So when it comes
I love
to
that. I love that
defining,
phrase, by the way. So,
yeah, and that's actually true. And I saw many occasions that we have a beautiful plan, beautiful strategy, but it's not executed in a way because of the culture difference.
yeah.
What is important as a company is to define the culture and which is behavior, how you get things done. So as every company has a goals and objective, so which is what you want to achieve. And at the same time, you need to define how to get things done. And that can be different by industry, by the, business objective. For example, when I started the company in Procter& and Gamble, which is much more traditional structure, and the industry itself is very stable. And it requires a lot of precision and perfection in terms of quality. So in terms of the culture that you expect is that you try to innovate, but innovate in a way that is really makes sense for our consumers and the market that we operate, right? So
Right.
that could be, going through a lot of consumer insight, but also move a bit slower because you don't want to make a mistake when it comes to the consumer product. But after I moved to the tech industry, obviously the tech industry moved much faster. So what you expect how things done is like you don't have perfection of 100%. You have a mindset of 80/20, so you need to move fast, and you have this
Hmm.
concept of MVP, so minimum viable product, and it can apply to the product launch, but also any kind of HR practices. If you feel like it's 80% ready, then try to launch and try to iterate from that learning and then move fast. So
Right.
that is really how the company defined how they do the business, which is translated into the culture. And many of the all company that I work was a global company. So what is also important then is how do I have this core of the company culture while embracing the diversity of the people that we operate and work with?
Hmm.
So that's where you try to embrace the diversity and inclusion, try to understand where the other person is coming from, and emphasize on the empathy so that you truly understand, as you mentioned earlier, truly understand that why this person is behaving in this way. There must be some context behind it, and be more curious so that you try to incorporate the diversity of that culture, but at the same time, you have a core company behavior culture that you want to try.
I know that you've worked in a few different countries already. What are there any examples or times when you were operating in a foreign country and you had some kind of cultural surprise or something unexpected that you thought was kind of the way to do things, but it's turned out that locally was not really the thing? Did that ever happen to you?
Yes, many times it happens. I remember when I first moved to China. So that was, I moved to in Beijing, and then I was quite young in my career. I got this opportunity to, lead a site as a site HR. So it was a big team, and everyone was Chinese in my team except me. And then I felt like, oh, okay, so I now need to establish myself as a leader. So I need to now establish that I know a lot of things, and then I try to skip the direction, and I have so many things that I would love to do in that site. But what I learned is that in that culture, first you really need to invest in the relationship. So before you get into a lot of like work stuff, you really try to understand, how this person's motivation and values and where the person's, in their own career project trajectory, so that I can connect those, personal motivation to the work that I try to do. So if I just focus on, which is also the American culture in some way, because I was working in an American company, focus on the work in getting to be more efficient, that had a bit of backfire when I tried
Okay.
to use that, tactic and approach in the beginning in my career in China.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And you've actually kind of stimulated a memory of mine, which was this unwritten rule in Korea about 100 days and into the work, and that first initial period is to kind of relationship build and get to know how things are, and that's literally the complete opposite to say like 100-day plan, which you might have to submit to your new company before you join and start implementing from day one, right? Because you have some milestones of day 100, and so there I was kind of 50 days in, 60 days in, and not really being told that I have to get on with anything, and not really having many projects, and I was getting a little bit nervous. I'll be honest. Why am I here? What am I doing? And then I heard about this the kind of unwritten rule, and sure enough, around about that period of time passed by, and the work started, and away we went, and it was all good from that point. So yeah, I also had similar kind of learnings when going abroad. So let me contrast that then to the opposite side. What's been the place that you found easiest to work in?
Easiest to work in.
I mean, you're Korean. Did you worked in Korea before you went overseas? I guess.
Yes, yes, yes. About 3 years I work in Korea.
I mean, but I also include Korea, whether you found Korea easy to work in or not. That's also okay.
Interestingly, that reminds me of one experience. So I will, a lot of culture, language, like the language that we speak shape the culture and,
For sure.
mindset, right? And
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
find actually the Korean language is, as you have exposed, Korean language is very hierarchical, because the language that you use to the people who are senior or has a higher title in the organization is different from the opposite way. So, but I work in as a HR business partner. So that means I need to partner and give advice to many of the business leaders who may be more experienced and knowledge in their own area.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
in order to
Yep.
establish the equal partnership, so that's one thing that I tried a lot in my earlier career. And I remember there's one incident that I had to work with the Korean business leader after I left Korea for a while. Then when I tried to, work with that person, the person is amazing, is nice, and there's nothing wrong with the person. But the moment that I speak in Korean with him, I felt already a hierarchy. So I couldn't express my ideas. I couldn't push him. I couldn't give him advice. So I
Right.
remember I asked him, even though my Korean is much better than my English, I
Yeah.
asked him,
Yeah.
can I speak to you in English when we do the, work? And he was very kind enough that, of course, you can speak any language that you're comfortable with. So yes, that's how I shifted my English when I work with him. But that really shows
Okay.
that, the language that we speak, regardless of the culture, one can argue, I would think that I would be, much more, I find it easier to speak in Korean because I'm Korean, but actually, no, I felt much easier to speak in English in the context of the work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it sounds like you found a good solution to get around that, especially when outside of Korea and
Yes.
that. Okay, and I want to kind of step back a little bit to, when you started your career, did you always want to go into HR? Was that something that you always had an interest and a passion for, or is that something that came to you in a different way?
Good questions. I majored in English literature. So if you ask my university self, my dream was I love reading, I love writing. My dream was to continue to study English literature, get a degree, come back to the university and be a professor. So that was
Okay.
the plan.
Okay.
But then I got into this, typical dilemma of should I go for something that I love and passionate for, or should I go for something that I can be good at? Because what I realized that I love reading and writing, but I may not be the, great at those activities. At the time, one of my professor advised me, "Oh, you can continue this path, but I feel like you can be great also at work environment."
Okay.
So I never knew what it means to work in the office. So I thought, okay, maybe I can try the internship. So I did an internship in Procter and Gamble at that time in HR. So
Hmm.
and then I really, really, really liked the job. And then I find it I can get good at. I build a mastery. I can put a lot of effort, and hence I become more and more like the work that I do. And then hence I stayed in the HR ever since.
Right. I think liking something, sorry, being good at something definitely makes it easier to like it, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and conversely, things you're not good at always seem harder to do. So, but then that first work experience, did you explicitly choose HR, or was that selected for you? I'm curious to know.
That time, P&G opened the internship for many departments, and I applied for the HR position.
I see. Okay, so you had thought about, yeah, that looks like the kind of work I want to do, and sure enough, it was what you liked and evidently good at, as your career path so far. So with that, being said, that you then essentially your entire career in HR, what is it that really drives you? What is it that kind of makes you get out of bed? I mean, I sometimes post on social media about trying to eliminate Monday blues, right? That people feeling that sense of dread that it's Sunday and I've got to go to work tomorrow. I don't want to go. No, let's try to get away from that situation. I don't know how it is for you, but what is it that drives you and makes you want to keep doing what you're doing?
Good question. So I love my job, and I think one of the reasons is it's very much connected to my personal mission. So my personal mission is to create positive impact to the people, especially by unlocking the full potential of that person or organization. I believe everyone has a potential, and there must be some kind of barrier for that person to fulfill those potentials. So I really feel joy in helping them to remove those barriers. And HR work is doing that work at scale. So if
Right.
I can help the person individually, I can help the leaders individually, that has a lot of multiplier impact. But also I can unlock the potential of the organization as a whole by getting to the right org design, building the capability, building the right culture, so that the organization can achieve the goal that they want to achieve.
I personally fully 100% agree with that. I'm also a massive advocate of the good work that HR can do. I feel that HR has traditionally, in some industries more than others, had such a bad reputation that a lot of people often don't like HR. It's usually associated with bad news, for some people, right? And so in the last episode, I had a guest, and we talked about the misconceptions of HR, and we
Mm.
tried to kind of look at that. Is there anything from your perspective that you feel would be something that you would like to do with HR, that if you could make HR even better? Is there something in that area that you would like to do more of within the HR field?
Absolutely. So my professional belief is number one, I am a business leader who creates the value through the HR or organization work, not the HR trying to do the HR stuff on a side way. So that's something that I tell with all my team. So hence, that means that business acumen is critically important. Whichever business that you support, you need to understand what is the goal, what is the objective, what is the metrics, how do you measure the success, and how to build the capability to achieve those goals. So being an HR as a business leader, strategic business partner is my passion, and then we are getting better, as you said, we are in the journey. So that is we are getting to the right direction. And at the same time, I also remind ourselves, including me, human is the only job title that has human in their job title. So I take that as a serious responsibility. So that means whichever decision that we make, we need to think about the impact to the people with the high level of empathy. So if you combine those strategic element, which is your mind and head, and the human element, which is your heart and empathy, that makes the great HR professional and great HR team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and what I'm really happy to see is that this seems to be becoming more common these days. This approach, and we don't, people talk about work-life balance, which suggests that work and life are split. Whereas I think a better way to look at it is work-life blending. What is the work which fits in with your life and can really kind of weave well into you as a person. Not that you just live to work. It's not that all of a sudden we become workaholics because it's everything to us, but that there is that good relationship between the two, and I think then that plays into how companies are becoming more flexible in terms of getting work done and what exactly work is, because of course I think the pandemic was a very much a turning point for that shift. And how is it for you as a leader? Are you in terms of your work structure? Are you working in a virtual environment? I mean, my team is fully virtual, and then we meet offline for the people in country once a week, generally offline. How is your kind of working structure for you?
So as of now, we are hybrid. So
Hmm.
we have certain days we work in the office and we have certain days we work at home, which then we need to connect virtually. And especially my role is the global team, like I lead the global team. So that means anyway, I have to manage a lot of team and do a lot of work virtually. So what I try to do is try to have a balance. So one, when I get into the office, when we have a team, we really focus on the work that needs to be done in person. And when we connect remotely, we try to also give some time for them to do the deep work individually, and then we come back in the office. And I also try to travel to the site, and I am big advocate for obviously the flexibility and working, but really nothing replace the in-person collaborations and the insight that I can get only from those by talking to the local team. And I
Right.
oftentimes discover that when we make a decision, or when we on the processes or organization structure or the plan, how is actually executed in the country, there may be a gap. Nobody's fault, right? So that's where we can bring a lot of value by having this both in-person collaboration and getting the insight directly from the local team and connect back to our strategy and plan on how we can effectively execute them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That in person, the level of insight you get is just of an order of magnitude so much greater than any virtual environment. It doesn't matter how interactive it is. It doesn't matter how,
Yes.
sometimes when I'm doing this podcast, people's gestures are being picked up, and then it kind of does animations, right? I mean, okay, so it's accentuating the emotional kind of part of it, but as you say, at the end of the day, it's really person to person that makes. But then of course there are some leaders who go the extreme and have meetings upon meetings about the meetings and such. So that's also something to be mindful of as well. Have you ever had a time when it sounds like you have very good way of managing everything? Have you ever had a time when you have actually failed to get stuff done and achieve everything that you needed to?
Yes, many times. But
Okay.
I think you mentioned COVID earlier, so that reminds me of the time that I really felt burnt out.
Okay.
So it was during the COVID. So right before the COVID, I got this amazing opportunity to go to New York for about half year and supported the global sales team that was in Google.
Okay.
So I was really learning a lot in during the assignment, but then I had to come back to Singapore because of the COVID. And I went back to my previous role at that time, and I felt like, oh, I am getting backward, or I'm being stagnated. So I volunteered for many global projects beyond my core role, and which is not uncommon for me how I built my career.
Okay.
But what I didn't anticipate was the impact of COVID, because I was in Singapore at that time. We had a complete lockdown, and
Yeah.
the
Right.
schools
Full
was
lockdown.
shut down. Yeah, full
Mm.
lockdown. Then that meant that now I have suddenly new full-time job, which is helping my daughter to do the remote studying. Like many organizations, the school were not ready to do the remote
Right.
education. And
I remember. Yep. Yep.
absolutely. And at that time, my daughter was 5 years old. So 5 years old has a limited attention span to be in front of the laptops.
For
Now
sure.
I had a complete different full-time job beyond my core job and all the global projects. So I felt complete burnout. So that time I felt like I couldn't do both, do a good job at work or at home. So that is a time that I really learned the importance of the self-care,
Okay.
self-compassion. Yes, striving and achieving is all important. But in order to have a sustainable growth and impact, you really need to take care of yourself.
And have you now? What are your techniques or habits that you do to make that self care and self compassion?
Good question. So now I have a list of activity that gives me joy and energy
Okay.
that I
Okay.
try to complete. I have a habit tracker, and when
Okay.
I plan my week ahead, I can share also the tactic on how I plan my week ahead. But when I plan my week ahead, I try to put the self care time in my calendar as well. So that
Okay.
could be my running or yoga, and I love journaling, so I do the journaling every night. So those are the things that I know that give me the energy beyond the work and also taking care of my daughter.
I see. And the habit tracker, do you do that through an app or is that something that's manual?
I have my digital notebook, so I
Okay.
just create a chart, list of the activity, and I check. And just checking that itself give me a joy. But one caution is that shouldn't be your another checklist that you feel like you're pressure.
Right.
So it's the
Right. Right.
goal is not to complete everything. The goal is to
Right.
see, okay, what are the things that you need to do to have a bit of balance and refresh.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I have a lot of people tell me that they find that they just have to schedule the time. If they don't schedule the time, then it doesn't happen. And there's different ways of doing that, of course. I mean, somebody I was talking with recently said we're blocking time. I think they were blocking 2 3 hour sessions, but they were not block on their calendar was not visible to anybody else. So it meant that people were still booking in their time and taking away their block time, as opposed to. So I think you have to be even more strict about that and really do that. I'm curious about journaling. I've heard many good things about it. It's not something that I've ever done before. What is it that you get from journaling, if I may ask?
There are many, many benefits of journaling. I'm a big
Okay.
advocate, and that's one of my habits. So I do the journaling the evening before I sleep.
Hmm.
And it helped me couple of things. One, I when I try to journal, especially when I'm very much stressed, I try to find at least five things that I'm grateful for.
Okay.
So that helps to shift the energy. Second thing is again when I feel like I'm overthinking the stuff, then just writing down whatever comes to my mind help me to put everything on the paper and see them objectively.
Okay.
That gives you a bit of distance on what's happening here, and then what is actually, what your thoughts are.
Okay.
And by just looking at the thoughts more objectively, help me to shift. Okay, this thought, particular thought that I feel, is it true? Is it a fact? Or is it just my perception? Right. So
Right.
having that objectivity and just putting everything down on the paper, that itself is quite healing.
Yeah. I mean, a mental unload, like you mentioned, and then an ability to actually better address those thoughts, and move forward and progress. I think that's very interesting. And so, um, do you keep all your journals? Do you ever refer back and reflect on journals from the past?
Yes, I do sometimes. So
Okay.
I'm also a big believer of setting the goal and achieving the goal. So I get a lot of joy by doing so. So whenever I have, for example, beginning of the year, or I have every quarter, so I have the goal, and then that journal helped me to look back and then see how much I have achieved, or what
Okay.
are the things that I've learned, and what are the things that I struggle at that time. So that really helped me to, yes, achieve more and then feel a bit more grounded.
Yeah, you mentioned that COVID was that tough time, having kids not going to school, and it was the same for us. We had one child who was doing online, again limited time, and one who was not, so that was just full time at home,
Mm,
all of a sudden. How do you go about balancing that side of things, the pressures that we feel as working parents? How has that been for you? From your daughter's
yes.
9, I think, right now.
Now 9 years old. Yes.
Same as mine.
Yes. Same. So yes, that is actually important. So a couple of things, that one is the practical approach that I have, and the other one is really the mindset. So if I start the practical thing, I really try to plan a week ahead.
Hmm.
And when I try to plan a week ahead, so I have some time, typically on Sunday evening or Monday morning, and I try to put everything that I need to do both at work and at home. And I try to break them down into pieces. For example, I have to plan for my birthday, the birthday party for my daughter, which actually happened, and then
Okay.
list down what are the things that I need to do to host the birthday party. So list down everything that I need to do at home, at work. And second thing that I do is try to prioritize. Is it something that I need to do next week or the week after? Or is it something that I can delegate to somebody else? Then the list become a bit shorter.
Right.
After that, the important step is to put that into my calendar. So I have only one calendar that I put everything, into the calendar, because I have only, one time. So I find it very effective. And in that calendar, then I know when are the things that I need, when is the time that I need to do important thing for at work, what is the event for my daughter, and also my professional life. And what is the also important is to follow that calendar, because
Mm.
oftentimes planning may be relatively easier, but
Yes.
following
Yes.
through could be more difficult when it comes to time. For example, if I see my deep work project into my calendar, at the time I may feel differently. I may feel like I don't want to do this. But overcoming that urge and sticking to the plan, because I know that this plan is what I had for me in advance, which is good for me. So I just follow the plan, and having that level of discipline is important. So, and then I try to reflect and plan the next week. So I find it very helpful to organize my life into one calendar and following
Hmm.
through in this way. The other
Yeah.
thing that I try to do, change my mindset, is again be truly present at the moment and try not to feel guilty about anything.
Okay.
For example, I travel a lot for my role.
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of work travel, because that means the time away from my daughter. But
Hmm.
as we said earlier, getting that locals insight, getting that in-person collaboration is important. So it's part of the job. So what I try to do then is, again, when I travel, I try to maximize the time that I am there, not just for the work, but also, I recently went to the Amsterdam. I love art. So I try to, spend some time to get to these museum galleries, which was beautiful. So instead of feeling bad about,
Okay.
I'm not spending time with my daughter, which anyway I cannot change. So focus
Yep.
on things within my control and try to maximize the experience so that I can be great at work and great at home and great for myself.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely an infinite pressure to be a perfect parent that exists, and it's not easy. My confession is, if I don't put it on my calendar, then it's not in my head. It's
Yeah,
like if it's not on the calendar, if I haven't, and so I've got to be very diligent with getting everything in the calendar in
true.
advance. Otherwise, so I just now, if something comes in, I immediately put it on the calendar, so that it doesn't kind of fall aside. Okay. Um, I want to ask a little bit now about the work in which you do within HR. Gives you, I imagine, quite an objective view about performance and talent development, and then of course skills. Um, and having been in HR for a number of years, you've probably seen an evolution of what companies value and now don't value. In terms of transferable skills, what would you say would be the most must-have transferable skill?
Good question. There are many, but in the context of getting things done, I think one of the critical transferable skill is this ability to build and maintain the trust with the stakeholders. Because when people trust you, trust me, they're more likely to support your idea, provide more support, provide more necessary resources, and you can get things done more easily. So this concept is beautifully explained in the book by Stephen Covey, and the
Hmm.
idea is the speed of trust. According to Steve Covey, trust function as a multiplier. When the trust is high, your speed goes up.
Okay.
Your ability to get things done is much higher when there is a trust. So building the trust is important, and the question of course could be then how to build the trust. I like this framework of trust equation.
Okay.
So it says trust equals the credibility times reliability times self intimacy divided by self interest. So what does it mean is if you and I are building the trust, the credibility means that you need to know that I know the skills and I have the skills and experience to get things done. So it's not more knowledge. Second thing, reliability. You should know that if I say I will do something, then you know that I will do it. So the actions and words are aligned. So that is
Yeah.
reliability. Third one is the intimacy. So I think you should know me as a person that, oh, what is the values, priority, preference of this person's work style. So the more you know the person, then you build a higher level of trust. And that are divided or eroded by the self-interest. You should know that I am not operating just by my own interest only. Hence, the establish the common interest is very important. So if you think about this framework and try to intentionally build a trust with the team member or stakeholders or partners, you can easily get things done in any context, and you can avoid my mistake of Beijing investing in the quality relationship
Yeah.
before you get things done.
I think that is an incredibly great insight, and a way of looking at things. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think, usually, that's more specific than what a lot of people put at the top of the transferable list of say interpersonal communication, or communication skills, but that's much more specific. And I think I would even go so far as to say that in the work environment, which in for a lot of companies is increasingly project based, you really need trust even more, because you're not working on a continuous work stream where things are always the same, with the same roles, the same responsibilities, the
Correct.
same expectations. Let's start this project. what do we have to get done? How are we going to get it done in the most effective way? And the ability to build trust is then critical. And like it's like you said, you were volunteering for global projects. You can only get selected to be allocated onto those projects if people have trust in you, right? So I think that's
Absolutely.
a really good way of looking at things, which probably for some companies they are still adjusting to this way of working. They want to be very rigid in your team is this is what your team does. You cannot work with any other teams because you are the resource dedicated to them. But I think that doesn't really fit this environment that we're in, let alone the speed of change which also comes as well. Um, how about you seem to have taken a lot of insights from your overseas experience in different areas, and you seem to also have a very high level of self-awareness as well in your leadership style. How is this something that you have kind of like consciously thought about your personal brand as you've gone through your career, or is it something that's kind of just naturally happening with you, and you're kind of navigating, taking things as they come? Is that something that you actually kind of spend time to consider, work on, and such?
Yes, in the beginning of my career, of course, I didn't know the importance of this, so I just tried to get things done,
Right.
to be the team and get great work done. But as I grow my career, I try to be more intentional on my personal mission statement. So I spent a lot of time in thinking through, okay, what is my personal mission and vision, and what is the value and the principle that I operate. So I have now my personal vision statement. I keep iterating from time to time. And what I also try to do is share this personal mission statement with the people that I work with. So when I join the new team, to my team or my key stakeholder, I share this mission statement. That brings the benefit of, first, I mean, I am very clear on, what I stand for. And second, it can hold me accountable because now they know what I try to what matters for them, and then they can see whether my actions are in line with the intent. And that by doing so, because not many people I realize that have put a lot of thought into this, personal mission statement and be more
Mm.
intentional in articulating this and sharing this. That itself creates certain brand for
Right.
myself as a leader. So be more intentional, be more proactive, be more strategic. So that also help just building my personal brand as a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of doing it, because if we say that the personal brand is observed by how people describe you, and you're being very overt and communicating clearly what your personal mission statement is, and what it is that drives you, then people will more easily be able to associate that with you. And as you say, that will elevate your personal brand. That's good. How do you go about soliciting feedback in order to know these kind of things? What's your method for that?
Great question. So feedback is a gift. So I really value the feedback. What I'm increasingly realizing is it's not easy to get feedback. The true feedback as
True
you continue
feedback. Yeah,
to
right,
true
right.
feedback. So I do a couple of things. One, obviously, I ask for more feedback, and when I ask feedback, try to be more specific. So, for example, if I join a meeting or if I share do the presentation, instead of asking the person, how was it? Asking the person, oh, how can I make it more effective in the beginning? Or, how can I be more clear in terms of my agenda? So by asking very specific questions, it is easier for the other people to provide more meaningful feedback. And second thing that I try to do is whenever they share the feedback, although I may not agree with the 100%, first I acknowledge. And then second, I try to come back and follow up with the feedback. So for example, there was one feedback that I got a few months ago that one person in my team is a bit scared of me. They're like, huh? How come? Like it's very difficult to be afraid of me. So it may be something in that person, but that was my immediate response. But I
Right,
tried
right, right.
to try to embrace the
Yeah.
feedback. Thank you for sharing this. I did this was my blind spot, and then I was more intentional in my behavior and interaction with that person. And later I come back to the person A who gave me the initial feedback. Oh, thanks to your feedback, I could identify the blind spot, and then my relationship with that other person become much more better. So try to close the loop by thanking the person and following up. So that makes the other person give then more feedback to me in the future.
Right. Yeah, right. I think that's a really good way to induce a more open communication. But you're right that sometimes we get feedback. The natural inclination is, well, what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
That's definitely a thing to do. Okay. And so what? Now you have been actually most of your career overseas. How do you see your career kind of evolving in the future? Do you have bigger career goals which you're still looking for? How does that look?
Great questions. Learning and growth, creating an impact. That is my one of the important drivers and values. As I try to, if I can get a job or the role that I can do that, I continue to learn, continue to help other people learn, and create an impact. That will be my path. And if you ask me specifically, is there any my aspirations? Since I love HR job, and I would love to lead the HR function end to end as a chief HR officer.
Right, right. It's actually something that I have been asking people via LinkedIn. What does it take to become a CHRO? So once I have collected enough
Amazing.
responses, I'm going to share those people's. I mean, I'm asking current CHROs, right? So that
Mm,
they can share that. So I'll be happy to share that in due course as well. All
that
right.
would be very helpful.
Cathy, I think we're pretty much out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights. I really like the way which you have a very clear, objective look at your personal impact and the fact that you have developed this personal mission statement, which feeds so well into your personal brand, is also really great to see. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I really enjoyed the conversation.
And thank you to everybody who's been listening and watching wherever you may be. This has been another episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. And remember, let's get stuff done.